Thank you so much, Ankita. And I want to thank your organization also for giving me this opportunity to host today's webinar. And like you mentioned, I will be talking about optimism and how we all are, actually multifaceted and how psychology actually plays a big role in the optimistic views of individuals. Am I audible and is the slide visible, Ankita, just before I start off?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. You are audible, and even the slides you can see.
The slides are visible as well?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the slide that you are showing us, yeah, that's
Yes,
visible.
right. So to start off with what psychology is all about, I think we all have a fair understanding of what psychology is, but I think there's still a taboo towards the field, and there are a lot of misconceptions also about what psychology is. So there have been times when I've actually met people who ask me what my profession is, and when I tell them I'm a psychologist, the first thing I get from them, or the kind of reaction that I get, is, "Oh my God, can you read my mind? And what do you think that I'm thinking of right now?" And they're very scared of being judged, and they think that whatever is playing on their minds is going to be read by me, but that's not what it actually is. From my experience, having worked in the sporting field for the longest time, I've come across a lot of athletes also or sports persons rather, who, when they say that they have to come to a psychologist, they say, "Oh my God, don't! That is the darkest place that is there, and I wouldn't want you to delve into that." But anyway, if you actually look at it again, they say that only people with major clinical issues actually go and visit a psychologist, and that is not true again. We all are human beings, of course, and we do have our own set of issues. It's just that how and to what extent you let this issue actually affect you is when you actually go to a psychologist and get help from them. And sometimes it's really okay to actually bank on a psychologist as a friend to get that sort of advice, if that is the word I could use. They think that it teaches us only how to rid ourselves of the kind of miseries that we put ourselves into, but that is not what it is. Even if you actually take our country, Indians, we are psychologically way, what do you say, advanced as compared to the Westerners. But it's sad that we actually want to follow the footsteps of the Westerners. If you actually see, psychology is also deep rooted in India. A few days ago, when I was having this conversation with current sitting magistrate of the Juvenile Justice Board, she was telling me and just having a good laugh about how in America or even in the UK, they have courses on karma. It's a 14-day course that they actually do to understand what karma is. But for us in India, it's just imbibed in us, and we do understand concepts of karma and things like that. Anyway, moving on, just to start off, in terms of psychology and yes, I'm sorry about that, but so life begins in utter helplessness. So I guess that's self-explanatory when you are born, or when someone's born, or the child is born. When you actually try forcing something on the child, or even if you try making conversation with the child, you see that the child just bawls. He is crying out aloud, because that is actually not what they actually asked for, right? So in life, everything is about making choices. So even when I start my sessions with people who come for help, I do a lot of root cause analysis, but I also remind them that everything that we do in life is a choice. Right, even as a child, even if you want to take the first step, your parents are holding you on either side and asking you to take a step, right? So whether you want to take that step or not is definitely a choice that you make. So the only choice that we all don't have in life right now is the family that we are born into. But everything else that we do after is actually a choice that we make. So even the way you think, the kind of decisions that you take, even if you think that somebody is going to think bad about you or what might go wrong, is again a choice that we all make again. So life is all about choices, and choices that you make yourself and not somebody else making it for you, unless you really make it such an important aspect of your life that somebody else is involved in making that kind of choice for you. Yes, so I'm going to actually talk about. There was this one psychologist who was the pioneer in positive psychology by the name Martin Seligman, who actually came up with the concepts of learned helplessness as well as learned optimism. So, like you can see, learned helplessness is a state that occurs after a person has experienced a stressful situation repeatedly. Well, I think we can actually take this into consideration with the current scenario and everything that's happening with the COVID-19 or the coronavirus that's there. I don't think that any of us were actually anticipating this kind of a situation. And, life is full of surprises. And from my years of learning, I've realized that the risk taking capacity of Indians is quite low. And also, there is a lack of self awareness amongst a lot of us. And emotional intelligence also has taken a beating. We are so dependent on somebody else. We are really not aware of how capable we actually are. And this is one time that has made us realize that, you have yourself by the end of it, and not really anybody else that you have been counting on for the longest time. And well, I think somewhere we also need to blame mass media and also the various social, what do you say, the various what do you say? Yeah.
The
So whereas
social media
social,
platforms.
yes,
Yeah.
social media platforms also, where we talk about Instagram and Facebook, and everybody's putting up whatever they are going through in life right now. But how true is it, right? Or they're even putting up their newly learned habits or what they were capable of. Or like, for example, people have been starting to bake or they've started to garden and things like that. And they think that they did not think that they had it in them. But, it's sad that, like I mentioned earlier, also human beings are multifaceted, but we choose not to actually go there and see what we are capable of. We think that we are actually cut out to do only one particular thing, and therefore, we actually bring in that monotony into our lives. I guess as much as this is having a toll on all of us, both mentally and physically, the current situation, I think it is also a blessing in disguise for a lot of us. Disguise for a lot of us to actually understand ourselves better, spend more times with ourselves and the closest associates, which is our families. Otherwise, we are so busy with doing whatever we do, and there has been like a set timetable for us to as to how our days actually go about. So anyway, coming back to learned helplessness, it's just that people, they come to believe that they are unable to control or change the situation, so they do not try. Even when opportunities for change become available, they are so there is a mind block that they all have, that we've tried and it's just not working. That's not how it is. You really haven't tried, and even if you have and it hasn't worked, it's okay. That's the same thing that I always say to parents and coaches as well of sports persons. I think when we were all growing up, when we used to go and play outside, and even though we got competitive personally, we really didn't take it to the next day and say, oh my God, I lost yesterday and I'm feeling so miserable about it. But the generation today, it's quite sad that they actually carry it with them to the next day as well. And especially the younger generation, they do not want to fall in the eyes of their parents, because it's understood that at that young an age, you actually look at the world from the eyes of your parents. But we as adults or parents have actually been there, done that, but and evolved as stronger individuals. But children today find it little difficult or very difficult to emotionally adjust to everything that is happening around. So I think it's really okay to lose. You tend to learn better when you lose. And I think success, like they say, is sweeter when you actually know what loss is, and then you start succeeding thereafter. Um, so learned helplessness is nothing but you yourself telling yourself that you're unable to do anything about the current situation that you put yourself into. And as much as you try, it's really not going to work out. So you just have that sort of laid back attitude and don't do much about it. So is there anybody who would want to ask any questions with regard to whatever I've covered so far?
Yeah.
All right. Yes. So moving on then, well, Martin Seligman also came up with the concept of learned optimism. So he was a clinical psychologist himself, where he always only looked into the issues and how to sort the issue out. But when his friend actually joined him and told him that he can do way beyond what he actually is doing, and telling him to look closely at what is already right and how to make it better, and this is what made him come up with the concept of learned optimism. It involves developing the ability to view the world from a positive point of view. It is often contrasted with learned helplessness. So when you actually talk about optimism, or when you talk about looking at the world from a positive point of view, I think we all have our own definitions of how life should be, of what life is all about. What may seem right to you may seem wrong to somebody else, and vice versa. But it's also a very disappointing aspect to actually understand from today's generation that, when you ask them what their definition of life is or what they feel positive about, they always have a definition that is based on what somebody else's life is all about. Right? So they think that, when you look at somebody being really happy or achieving all that they've done it very easily, but they don't actually look back or look or do that groundwork to see what actually went into doing all that they actually did to get to where they are, right? So there's a lot of self beating that happens, and they are not accepting of themselves. They always want to be somebody else. They do not want to fall in the eyes of somebody. It's perfectly okay to actually fall in the eyes of somebody, and I think it's necessary that it's taught backwards, that it's okay to fall. You need to fall, you need to lose, and then pick yourself up, and that makes you a stronger individual. That is the case with most sports persons. I'm going to take sports persons, well, that considering that's the population I've worked with, but their goals being sports, whereas the goals for the others who are working in other industries is completely different. But everybody is aiming towards an end goal. So even if you ask an athlete or a sports person, or those who even are at the national level, you ask them what their dream is, they'll definitely tell you that it is the Olympic gold. But how realistically have they set these goals for themselves? Are they doing all that it takes for them to get there? Or have they really, weighed their pros and cons out to see if they're doing all that they need to get there again, right? So it is easy for anybody to build dreams and actually build castles in the air rather, but there's a lot of fortitude that actually goes behind, and a lot of determination and hard work that actually goes behind in achieving these dreams and goals. So and every time they're let down, they cannot tell themselves that this is not what I'm cut out to do. So they have to, like in learned optimism, like they say, by challenging negative self-talk and replacing pessimistic thoughts with more positive ones, people can learn how to become more optimistic. Yes, so every time I think self-talk is one of the most sought after aspects in psychology, or even from my experience, because first and foremost it actually keeps you in the present. We always anticipate the future, not knowing what it actually has in store. So when somebody was asking me about what I think is in store once the crisis is over, I kept telling them that sports persons are maybe going to set themselves up for a downfall more than an uphill move, because they're going to overdo it. They think that they have to make up for everything that has been lost in this time that that they've been at home. So there's going to be a lot of injury, there is going to be a lot of disappointment, and they're also going to be very low on self-esteem and self-confidence. And then what happens, conveniently they start blaming the government and everybody else around, saying that we weren't given permission, this, that, and the other. So that is more of a pessimistic view. So in order to be optimistic, you really need to see how you actually set yourself up for these challenges. you need to realize that we are all human beings by the end of it, and not machines. And machines are also created by us human beings, right? So yes, so coming to Samira's question, being a sports psychologist, do you see behavioral changes by the sport they play, like all cricketers think alike versus as all footballers or athletes? Samira, to answer your question, not really. When you actually see, it's completely different for each and every sporting aspect. So, a team sport like cricket and football will have the same behavioral aspects, right? Whereas when it comes to a sport like badminton, it's completely different because it's more of a reactive sport. So there is somebody you are actually reacting to. And when it actually comes down to a reflective sport like golf, it's completely different. So there are behavioral changes, but they're very, very subjective also, because in a team game, like they say, it takes all kinds to make the world. It's the same with team sports as well. Whereas when it comes to a reflective sport like golf, it's really more, it weighs heavily on the minds of these sports persons, because they have only themselves to blame and they really can't blame the environment per se. And whereas with reflective sports, of course, again, you're just reacting to one person on the other side. So you really need to also understand the other aspect as well. And Sameer, is it important to be ready with worst case scenarios right at inception? Again, from sports person's angle, does it impact the morale or stop you giving your best? Missing attention, injury, endurance, etc. Yes, like I said, you need to also be prepared for whatever is going to be the future. You can't, as much as you anticipate it, you also need to actually prepare yourself mentally also. But it's important that you look at how you're actually accepting the present in the first place, and only then can you actually look into the future. So you need to understand yourself and how you are actually uh, adjusting to the current scenario and the environment that you are in right now. So the better you actually accept the present, the better you will actually be able to accept the future as well. I hope I've answered your questions there. Uh, so yes, coming back to learned optimism. Well, I'm just going to take a few examples from my experiences as well. So when I was in this point in time of finding a job for myself, I did interview with a lot of organizations, and as the interviews begin, it's very casual, and then you're building a rapport and you're getting comfortable. But when it starts getting a little professional, the person who is interviewing you drops the biggest bomb, talking about depression. What do you have to say? Everybody has depression, or that's the thing that everybody is being diagnosed with now. Like I said, all human beings actually go through a phase of being depressed, but it is to what extent you actually let it affect you. Okay, depression can also I'm not going to include the clinical population here, because they do have an underlying reason, or there is a specific reason behind why they are depressed. But when it comes to the general population like us who really don't have a problem, it is okay to have a low, right? Sometimes you feel, and it's sad that people run to these search engines to or the internet, on the internet, to find out the kind of symptoms that they're having, or the kind of feelings that they're having, and conveniently label themselves, or they just think that they do have depression. It just doesn't work like that. And then you run to somebody who will put you onto pills because you've just told them, or you've actually somewhere subconsciously accepted the fact that you have that, and then you go to a professional, you put on pills, which is really not necessary, and then you realize with time that that's not what you needed. So getting you to wean yourself off these medications also gets difficult, right? So it is high time that we all understood that we are human beings, and we do have difficult times and lows, and it's perfect to be that. right? It's not that because I'm a psychologist, I'm not going to have a difficult time. Of course I do. And well, we are all faced with various adversities, but you we set ourselves up for these challenges, and it's really in us to actually fight them out, and it we do have it in us to do it. Now again, it's a choice whether you actually want to fight your downfalls or not. So okay, so Soma, so answering your question, we all focus on positive emotions, but negative emotions also play an important part. What is your view on that? And do you think parents in society play important parts in believing so? Of course, we do have negative emotions, and they do play a part as well. But it's really important to see what brings about these negative emotions. So, like I keep saying, I'm not going to use psychological jargon here because I don't know how many of you are from the psychological background, but it's pointless because if I have to talk from a layman's point of view, it is important that you do a lot of root cause analysis to say what is the source of you actually feeling negative. And the other thing is, we always look at it at what can go wrong, what may go wrong, what must have gone wrong. And that's the case with sports persons also, like I was just saying. When you come out from a match that you've lost, the first thing is, why were you in such a bad shape, or why did you not win? What went wrong? What do you think happened? Why don't we ask, what is it that you took away from that? What is it that your opponent learned from you, right? It's not always about winning. There's so much more you actually learn from losing as well. So even as a child, when you're sent to play, your coach is actually giving you advice as to what you need to go and do on the court or pitch, etc. But you actually go there, you actually watch the child is not going to follow anything of what the coach or the parent has actually told him or her. They're just going to go out there and risk it and come back doing whatever it is. And you know what? If you actually see, they don't emote until and unless, if they've lost and come back, they're not emoting until and unless the coach or the parent goes and asks the child, what went wrong and why did you lose? And that's when self-doubt actually sets in. Right? Until then, they're just not affected by anything that has happened. So I think we shouldn't actually corrupt the minds of these young children, or the upcoming generation rather. So coming back to focusing on negative emotions, like I said, yes, they do play an important part, but you also need to understand, have you been reasonable enough to actually have received that sort of feeling, or have felt negative about something? Parents and society, yes, they do play a very big role in this. Like I said, parents, well, I'm not a parent, but being an adult or also being an aunt to my niece, I can understand that, just because I've had a bad day, and, and I couldn't get out of it the way I wanted to, the same thing is going to happen to my niece. No, I think evolution, that is also something that we need to look into. I think children today are born smart, and they're also emotionally very, very intact. But we are the contributing factors for them to actually make them feel way below what they actually are, or how way below how tough they actually are. So we do actually contribute somewhere. They have a mind of their own, but we do want to have an influence on them, which is not the right thing to do. I think times have changed. It's time we actually started learning from them, rather than we teaching them what to do. And society, I think the kind of culture that we are in, and the country that we come from, society is again a very integral part of our lives. But again, it's a choice you make as to how much you want it to affect you. Well, idle minds are the devil's workshop, and I guess most of the time when people are passing comments or saying a lot of things that they have to, is not with your best interest at heart, but it's just a way of people putting you down. So in coming back to learned optimism, like I say, always look at what can you learn out of any bad situation. You don't have to always take it in the negative. There is so much that you can actually take away from something that went wrong, something that made you feel miserable, right? So coming back to what the benefits of learned optimism is, they say that, when you actually look at the brighter side of it, and you've actually weighed your pros and cons, and when you've actually learned better out of what actually went wrong, there are better health outcomes, because you really stop worrying that much and you really don't stress that much, and you stop overthinking also, and you realize that you have better things to do than really keep focusing on just that one aspect. And life has so much to offer, and we don't have to subject ourselves to just one specific thing. Like people say, they ask you how is it that you go and what are your stress busters. So once you, after a long day, you say you go back home and probably wind up with a cup of tea, or you just relax on your couch, you listen to music. That's a daily thing that we do. But have we ever risked anything different? Well, why don't we just make it a point to start reading something, just something as simple as a book that has probably 10 pages. Pick up a child's book for all you care. It can just be a bedtime story. Read it. It's okay, right? Maybe there's something you will learn from it, or maybe it will just bring a smile on your face, and you can actually bring back memories of the past that made you feel better. There are also longer lifespans, because like I said, you stop worrying, and then the more you worry, the more it takes a toll even on your health, and then your nutrition levels go for a toss. You binge eat, you tend to overdo it in terms of alcohol, or even smoking, or even eating food that is not really healthy, right? And all of this, actually, they're all silent killers. You don't realize it while you're doing it, because you're not in the right state of mind at that time. You've just jumped to conclusions, and you don't really want to reason out with yourself or with anybody else as to what has actually gone wrong, right? So longer lifespans, when you actually sit, breathe, and actually, like I said, do your root cause analysis and see if it's really worth spending that much time on something that really doesn't matter to you, or you are breaking your head or feeling miserable about what somebody else has told you, not even having thought from your point of view. And being optimistic also lowers stress levels. So you actually are stressed lesser. And if you are stressed more than you actually ought to be, you have an impact on everybody else around you as well. Well, even right now, if you don't have anybody living with you with the kind of lifestyles we all have, we are still have access to technology. You pick up the phone, you leave a message that you really don't mean, or you call somebody and say something that you really don't mean. At that moment, you don't know what sort of a mindset, or what sort of a mood that person would be, and they would take it in a manner that is not intended to, and then you're spoiling the relationship again. Sometimes even asking for forgiveness after that doesn't work, because, like I said, you're not thinking from the other person's point of view as well. They also say that if the benefits of learned optimism, there is higher motivation. Yes, like I said, optimism or learned optimism is a takeaway from what you've actually lost out on. So when you have or when you see results, or when you see that there is reason enough for you to feel positive or optimistic about something that hasn't gone right or the way that you wanted to, the motivation levels are higher, so you tend to actually do better, and your reasoning, decision making, and problem solving levels also improve, right? And most importantly is you have better mental health, because you're thinking from your point of view, you're thinking for yourself, and you really have to be selfish at this point in time, because it's about you and your betterment, your better mental health, as well as everything else that makes you happy and keeps you in the kind of happy place that you want to be in. Right? So, like I said, lose enough so you can win. Yes, losing teaches you a lot more than what it is, because like I said, when a sports person is going to participate in the Olympics, from whatever country and whatever background you come from, I guess everybody is put in the same kind of effort, and they've all toiled, and some of them have even put in more effort than they really ought to. And conveniently, it's only the first three winners that are always given the importance and the credit, and the underdogs are the ones who are always left behind and not given their due. And if you really see that, most often than not, the ones who are actually not given the importance are the ones who actually work hard and come up later, and then they're like, oh, so this was the person who was there, but we conveniently ignored this person, right? So, but you also see the perseverance. They haven't given up after that one loss. They still fight it, and they still come up. And in spite of whatever adversities they face, they are still fighters, and they haven't lost the spirit of sportsmanship. And they are getting to where they want to, even if they're going to lose the second time around, it's really okay for them, right? um, so coming to Samir Ghosh's questions again, everyday winning or progressing upkeep your energy levels and enthusiasm, and does impact in opposite ways when it's stand constant for a while. How long this non-progress line or time okay to be in? Every winning or progressing upkeep your energy levels and enthusiasm, and does impact in opposite ways. Yes. When it stands constant for a while, how long does this non-progress line or time okay to be in? Well, okay, so now again, Samir, answering your question, I don't know if I've got it right, but anyway, to answer the question that you've actually sent me, yes, when you actually set yourself up for challenges, and you know that winning is what you actually want all the time, or you have been seeing it for the longest time, you see that it has an impact in the opposite way. Okay. And it stands constant for a while. Yes. And this no progress line or time to be, see, there are no timelines per se for anything that you set yourself up for, Samir. So it's really, like I said, how realistically have you set it up? And when winning becomes a habit, and you really haven't faced what a downfall is, that's when you really get restless, and it's not in your capacity to fathom that you can also have a downfall. Taking the current crisis as well into consideration, who would have even thought that you would be subject to the four walls of your house for such a long time, like 2 months at a stretch? Well, nobody thought that. You thought you can risk it, go out, do this, that, and the other, but no, it wasn't possible. And when they started telling you, or how severe the issue actually is, everybody started becoming a lot more aware about it, right? Nobody thought about their own well-being. They only thought about what they wanted to achieve. But only if you have your well-being in place can you actually achieve what you are set out to do. So there is no timeline per se to actually see how long you can actually stay in this aspect of no progress, or the time to be okay in that situation. I hope I've answered your question there. Um, yes. Sorry. So coming back to what it is, we look into how you can recraft your life. Right now, when everybody say that they are being subject to the four walls of their house, and really interaction being subject to just our phones or the laptop, there is so much more that we could have all done, that is looked into our own emotional quotients as well as our self-awareness. I guess these are the various things that we could have actually focused on in terms of warmth, optimism, happiness. We could have looked into how youth has had an impact on us depending on the kind of age levels that we are at. Then we have friendships. You really know who stands by you and who doesn't, especially at these times. You also know that what are the new friendships and relationships that you create. If there has been any sort of feeling of uncomfortable situations, or feelings of being uncomfortable between certain people, or even your family members for that matter, I guess this is a time where you can actually sort these things out. It's really okay for you to become the smaller person, to say sorry and ask for forgiveness, and sort this entire thing out, so that this can also stop playing on your mind somewhere. Innovation, like I said, we think that we are only cut out to do something, to do one specific thing. And I'll keep saying it again, human beings, all of us are multifaceted, and you really don't have to stop at one habit or one sort of, hobby that you have. There are so many things that you can actually do, and you would be surprised to see how much you are capable of, and just not what you were capable of so far. Love, energy, appetites, all of this to do with your well-being as well. Kind of food you eat, nature, wealth, health. You have wisdom, you have royalty, you have creativity. You look into your levels of trust, how much you trust yourself first before you actually go out to start trusting somebody else. Then you also look into your confidence levels, as well as how much of an impact technology has on you. Well, I think it's again, it has its pros and cons. We were all so much more technologically driven before this entire thing happened. I guess this was good, so that there is more of a human touch to a lot of things, people getting enough time to spend with each other, right? um, yes. So Soma, coming to your question about how important do you think people should be more aware and educated about mental health? As you have mentioned, in India, it is still not talked openly like any other health issue. Yes, of course, it's still a taboo. When I do have people coming in to 4 sessions, the first thing they say is, I hope you're not going to tell anybody. I hope I'm not mad. No, it's just not that. And we do have a confidentiality clauses. There is still a taboo towards psychology. There is still a lot of awareness that needs to be created. And like I said, we need to stop westernizing psychology first. And as a country, the population is psychologically way more advanced as compared to a lot of them. And that is also because we are culturally so rich, and also we are hospitable, and we are very flexible as individuals as well. So yes, I think there is still a lot of awareness that needs to be created. And I think we also need to break mindsets that people say that, like I said, like when I used to interview, people told me, you worked in sports, how do you think you're going to fit into a corporate? Well, that's not what it is. We are all human beings by the end of it, with different goals, right? So it's just about how you help them overcome whatever issues that they have, in order to achieve what they are looking to achieve. Shruti, when you ask me about how mental health takes part in your productivity in working from home, because when we go to office, our thoughts are controlled as we are surrounded by our colleagues and friends. But at this time, it's really difficult to control your thought. You are alone at your home. Can you help? Well, again, talking from my experience, like at the time of my introduction, I was told, you all were told that I've been working out of Coog. Well, honestly, to work from home, I traveled 27 kilometers one way to actually do my work. Apart from the webinar that I'm hosting today, there are various other things that I do. So the place that I live in is right between a forest, the Nagarhole Forest Reserve. I don't know if you'll have heard of it. And because of the number of wild animals we have around, the radiation has to be reduced, and therefore I don't have good network. So the last time I was supposed to do this webinar, I had to cancel it because of incessant rainfalls with hailstones and trees falling across the road. So I had to request this webinar to be done preferably in the morning. Yes, so I don't know who is in a better situation right now. Like I said, probably you all are in cities where you have access to better internet and technology, because that's how it works today. Or maybe I'm better off because at least I have places to walk out into the estate or the gardens, and there's not much human interaction with everybody asking us to keep social distance. So when it comes to how mental health takes a toll on my productivity, initially I was really apprehensive as well as to what might happen and if I'm going to be really productive during this time. I'm sorry, but I don't think it has been that bad, because I've made a choice to actually travel this far and do whatever it is. At least if somebody is going to take something away from whatever sessions I handle. Yes, we are all so used to, well, humans are gregarious in nature, like they say. We are social animals. It's really important that we have people around us. But I think in time that we have gotten so used to having people around us and being a type that we actually aren't. We have to put up a facade. We have to put up this sort of face where we have to adjust to the situations, and you're really not comfortable in that skin, right? So I think this break is good for you to actually be the way you are, be who you actually are, more than you being what somebody else wants you to be. So this is the time you really make use of how you can be the best part of you, the best edition of yourself rather, and accept yourself for what you are and give yourself that time. Otherwise, with the kind of traffic that there are in these cities, it takes us so much time. Most of our lives are spent on the roads in our cars traveling, and our ears being plugged and listening to the same music time and time again. And also but also on the other hand, I want to say that we are so affected by whatever media has to say and how everybody is talking about the COVID-19. It is now here. What can we do? We have to accept it, but we just take our own precautions and do what best is for us to actually stay safe and have the best for ourselves. So, like I said, being alone at home is perfectly okay. Involve yourself in a lot of other things also, and try as much to do something different. Try your hand at something that you have never done. So I think that is the biggest challenge that you can set up for yourself. Yes. Please remember, the most time that you spend in your life is with yourself, because only yourself is with you throughout. So please give enough importance to yourself and do whatever best you can to make yourself feel better. Um, then I have another question where how mental health
Rachama,
issues. Yes.
sorry to disturb you, but I would just request you to, if you have any other slides to finish, then maybe you can finish that first, and then we can take questions in case you have any other thing.
No. This and the next would be the concluding slide.
Okay. Then not a problem. Then let's move on.
Yes. So how mental health issues differ among introverts and extroverts? Are introverts affected by mental illness more often? Well, now this is a very debatable topic, because you every human being again has both aspects of an introvert and an extrovert. It's what you want to be by the end of it, or how you are made. Are introverts affected by mental illness more often? Not really, because it really depends. Like I said, it's subjective. It really depends on how you actually handle yourself and what it is that you do to keep yourself occupied more often than not. Sometimes introverts try being extroverts and that doesn't work, and vice versa, where extroverts try being introverts and it just doesn't work. It's highly dependent on how you are and what you choose to be in a particular situation. If you're comfortable being by yourself and not having too many people to interact with, it's really okay. Like I said, please be comfortable in the skin that you are in. You really don't have to be governed by the rules of society or your peers. So no, introverts are not affected by mental illness more often. It's just that it's a hype that introverts are affected by mental illness more often. No. Also, if there is a clinical underlying issue also that makes a person an introvert, then yes, mental illness is more affected towards these introverts, right? And so signing off, to conclude, I am going to talk about how it is okay to be terrible, and you can always become tremendous also. And in order to progress from terrible to tremendous, all it takes is learned optimism, that is taking away whatever best you can learn, even from the negatives, and also what better you can learn from what is already right. It's only what is there on your mind and kind of mindset that you have. Tanvi, as you mentioned, my child always wanted to win and get upset when he lost. How do we explain to him or let him know that losing is not bad? Well, I would want to tell you as a parent, I think you need to tell them from your experiences as well, that when you've had downfalls or you've had a bad experience and then you were okay with it, how you got that that situation and you've come up to what you are today. And like I said, every time your child loses, tell them that the opponent also has learned something from them, and it's not just that the child has lost. So there are always takeaways from the situation that the child is in, right? You tell them it's really okay, and also tell them that the next time, and even if the next time the child loses, it's okay, we are going to keep trying. And it is about participating and going out there to understand what it is that makes the person accept loss better. I hope I've answered your question there. So, like I said, please take away whatever you can best from a terrible situation, and you can make amazing outcomes out of them. But again, it's all in your control. And like I said, it's a choice you make. The only choice right now that none of us have is the family that we are born into, but everything else is a choice that we make.
Thank you so much, Reshma. I had one question that I would like to ask
Please.
you. Um, like right now, because there is a lot of conversation about self-care and positive approach and all of that. Right
That's
now
right.
we are sitting at home, so there are a lot of conversations about journaling or writing down stuff that you're thinking about and all of that. But once we again go back to work, which will happen in a couple of months, that extra time or the kind of time that we would get when we were at home would kind of go away, right? So can you just give me like a few tools or like a few things that we can practice on a day-to-day basis? Like they say that just write down 3 things that made you feel good about yourself today.
Yes.
So something like this, if there is any tool or anything like that that you can just give us so that we can put it into a habit kind of a situation.
That's
Is
right.
that?
That's a great question, Ankita. So, in order to just start off answering that question, first of all, I want to say that there's this underlying belief that psychology is actually has solutions to all problems. Well, it does, but again, Ankita, the thing is, psychology is very, very subjective. Like how they say that our thumbprints or fingerprints or even our tongue prints are completely different, and no two people are alike. That's the same way with psychology as well. So there is no blanket therapy that works for everybody, but small things like you said, for example, like you said, 3 things that made you feel good today, and tomorrow when you go back to work, if you really don't have time to do something like this, the simplest thing that you can do is go back to reading what you actually wrote, right? So it could be that. And also, I'm sure it's not the least that we can do is give ourselves a minute a day, if not more, Ankita. So you really still can take that minute off to write at least one thing that made you feel nice today, right? And it's really nice to go back to what made you feel nice more than going back to what did not make you feel nice. I think that's, again, we tend to delve or wallow in a lot of self pity because of the kind of difficult experiences that we've had as individuals, right? So if it can, even you don't have to really make a note in physically, but at least mentally make notes of what actually made you feel nice, or what has made you a better person after this situation. I hope I've answered your question there, Ankita.
Absolutely, that makes a lot
Yes.
of sense.
I think there's somebody else also who's asked a question. As you mentioned, sorry, is there anybody else with another question?
Tanvi had the last question on the chat box at least.
Yes, I think I answered Tanvi's questions in terms of. Yes.
You answered.
Yes. So is there anybody?
I think we don't have any more questions, at least from the chat box. Okay. There's one question.
Yes. So as humans are social animals, and if kept isolated for long time can cause severe depression. And situations like these can make it worse for some people. There are few studies too. Yes, Soma, I totally concur that humans are social animals, and if kept isolated for the longest time, it can cause severe depression. But this again is very important in terms of how you're keeping yourself occupied. If you're going to sit and say that, I am, see, now right now the situation that we are in is inevitable, the rule applies to everybody, so nobody is being treated any differently. Now it's all in your hands as to how you actually would want to avoid situations like this. It's not like we do not have access to a lot of things that we can do even at home. Like I said, we tend to think that we are actually subject to only specific kinds of things. We do not try our hands at something that we haven't done. Sing out aloud for all you care. If you haven't been a singer, who cares if you have a bad voice or not? If that's what's going to make you feel good, then why not? Because they say, sometimes singing and music actually can be one of the reasons to keep, or one of the contributors to keep depression at bay. Talk to yourself. It's really okay. Positive self talk is really important, right? Keep yourself occupied by probably learning 5 new words in a different language, or even in English for that matter. Make conversations with people who you actually go and interact with, even if it's having to buy your daily needs, right? So small things like these can actually make a difference. See, there are a lot of studies that are being done, but then again, on what population, who is it that they have been referring to? I think that's the most debated topic again in psychology. Studies are done only on specific types of populations and specific kinds of people, and the kind of conclusion that is drawn is only because of them. So I think over there also, please cut yourself some slack by not reading too many of these researches, or taking them too seriously sometimes, please. Okay. Definitely, I will make sure that I do look into studies as well. I've kept myself updated with the researchers as well. But yes, like I said, it's very, very subjective, Soma. So I think it's really important that you do something different as well. Think out of the box, like they usually say. Um,
Correct. I think
yes,
that's all the time that we have.
yes.
Thank you so much, Ejima, for taking out time in the morning and having this very, very interesting session with all of us. I think all of us needed this kind of a push to, carry on with the kind of work that we are doing. So thank you so much for doing it. Thank you all for attending today's session. And as I mentioned earlier, I have put all the links